My name's Daniel Reeves. I'm 40 now, but back in 1990, I was just a kid, 12 years old, living at a place called the Ash Creek Orphanage. People always imagine orphanages as these sad, gray buildings full of crying kids and cruel caretakers. But Ash Creek wasn't exactly like that. Not at first. It was an old 3-story house at the edge of town, surrounded by oak trees and the smell of river water. There were about 20 of us, boys and girls, all different ages. The building used to be some rich family's estate before they lost it to taxes, and the state turned it into temporary housing for displaced minors. That's what the sign said, anyway. The caretakers were decent people, mostly. Mrs. Garrison was the head mistress, strict but not cruel. Her husband handled maintenance, and the 2 assistants were teenagers from town earning volunteer hours. If you kept your head down and followed the rules, life wasn't bad. You got 3 meals, a warm bed, and enough chores to keep you tired enough to sleep. But the nights were different. The house changed after dark. Creaks in the floorboards that didn't match the footsteps. Whispering sounds in the vents, too low to be wind. Every kid had their own theory. Some said the place was haunted by the family who used to live there. Others said it was rats. I didn't believe either. Not then. Still, I remember waking up one night to see the hallway lights flicker, and for half a second, I thought I saw someone standing at the far end. Just a shadow, maybe. I told myself it was Mrs. Garrison doing her rounds. But when I asked her the next morning, she said she hadn't left her room. We all tried not to think about the things that scared us. It was easier that way. The town didn't care much about Ash Creek or the kids inside it. Nobody came to visit except the social workers, and they always looked relieved when they left. If you go there now, you won't find much. Just a stretch of concrete foundation and a half-burned sign swallowed by weeds. They tore the rest down after the fire. That fire? That's why people still talk about Ash Creek. They say it started just past midnight, but that's not true. I remember hearing something before the fire ever touched a match. A noise, like the walls breathing. I remember the heat, not from the flames, but from inside the vents, like something was already burning below us. There were no smoke alarms back then, not in a place like that. When the fire trucks came, half the building was already gone. Out of 20 children, only 7 made it out. The Garrisons didn't. And for 30 years, everyone's been arguing about what really happened that night. Faulty wiring, old pipes, a candle left burning. But I know the truth, because I was awake when it started. And I heard something moving under the floorboards, right before the heat came. That's why I'm telling this story now. Because lately, when the wind blows through the trees at night, I swear, I still hear it breathing. Invisible. We had staff come and go. Nurses, cooks, even a handyman or 2. They never lasted long. The older kids used to say Mrs. Calloway made them leave, that she didn't like outsiders looking too close. One of the older boys, Nate, told me that once, a nurse tried to report her to the county. A week later, the nurse's car was found abandoned halfway to the next town. Everyone said she just quit. But Nate swore he saw Mrs. Calloway scrubbing the hallway floors that same night. And the mop water was red. There was something off about that house. The walls creaked like they were breathing. At night, you could hear footsteps in the attic, even though nobody lived up there. And the worst part was the smell. Not smoke, this was before the fire. It was something sour, like rot. Mrs. Calloway said it was the pipes, but we all knew it wasn't. Then one night, everything changed.
It started on a Sunday night. The air was heavy, humid, the kind that clings to your skin even with the windows open. We'd finished dinner, said our evening prayers, and gone to bed by 9. I remember lying there, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow above me. It kept clicking, like something was stuck in it. Then, somewhere around midnight, I woke up. No reason. Just that quiet kind of panic you get when the world feels wrong. The fan had stopped. The air felt thicker, warmer. I could smell something faint, like burnt dust, or maybe melted plastic. I sat up, listening. Everyone else in the dorm was asleep, but under all the snoring and shifting bedsheets, there was that breathing sound again. Slow, deep, like someone inhaling through the walls. I thought I was dreaming, but when I looked down the hall, I saw a light flicker, a dull orange glow creeping along the floorboards. I ran to the door and opened it, and that's when I saw it. Smoke, thick and black, rolling down the hallway like a tide. Someone screamed from one of the other rooms. The alarms didn't go off because we didn't have any. I remember Mrs. Garrison bursting out of her quarters, shouting for everyone to get out. Her husband was behind her, coughing, trying to herd the younger kids towards the stairs. But the stairs were already gone, swallowed by fire. The whole lower floor was an inferno. You could feel the heat even from the landing. I watched the wallpaper peel itself from the walls, the wood crack and pop like gunfire. Kids were crying, calling for their brothers and sisters. And through it all, that breathing sound never stopped. It was louder now, like something alive, sucking in the smoke. Mrs. Garrison shoved a wet towel into my hands and told me to crawl, to stay low. She went back for one of the smaller kids. That was the last time I saw her. I made it to one of the back windows, but it was nailed shut. The kind that only opens a few inches for safety. I remember hitting it with a chair until the glass shattered. The cold night air rushed in, mixed with the heat, and the whole room seemed to scream. I climbed out onto the ledge and jumped. Broke my arm when I landed, but I didn't feel it until later. I looked back and saw the orphanage burning from the inside out. Every window glowing, the roof bending inward like the house was bowing before it collapsed. They said it took less than 20 minutes for the whole place to go down. 20 minutes to erase years of lives. 7 of us made it. The rest, they were gone before the fire trucks even found the road. In the days that followed, the investigators called it electrical. They pointed at the old wiring, the bad fuses. They didn't want to hear about the breathing, or how the fire seemed to move like it was following someone. But I heard it again, you know. Weeks later, when I was staying at the hospital, late at night, when the machines were quiet, I heard that same slow inhale, like the walls were remembering. Sometimes I think whatever started that fire wasn't finished, because every few years, another old house burns down near Ash Creek, and each time they say the same thing: faulty wiring, electrical fault. But if you ever stand there, on the foundation where the orphanage used to be, and you stay real quiet, you'll hear it too. That slow, heavy breath under the ground, still waiting for someone to wake up. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was how quiet everything was. No screams, no alarms, just the slow beep of a heart monitor. I was in the county hospital, bandaged from head to toe, lungs raw from smoke. The nurse told me I'd been found about 50 feet from the orphanage gate, half buried under wet ash. The firefighters said the blaze started in the basement. They couldn't figure out how it spread so fast. Old wiring, maybe. But one of them mentioned the door to the basement had been locked from the outside. I remember staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I hadn't heard that right. Detectives came the next day. They kept their questions simple at first. What I remembered, who was inside, if I'd seen anyone leave before the fire started. I told them about the smell of kerosene, about the screaming, about hearing Mrs. Calloway's voice shouting something I couldn't make out. They wrote everything down, but never looked me in the eye. A few days later, one of them, Detective Harris, came back alone. He asked if I'd ever noticed strange behavior in the weeks leading up to the fire. He said the neighbors had reported seeing lights in the windows late at night, long after we were supposed to be asleep. I told him that wasn't strange. Mrs. Calloway used to wander the halls with her lantern, making sure we didn't sneak food or talk after curfew. But when I said that, he went pale. He said the fire crew found something in the ashes. A metal bucket, half melted. Inside it were bones. Animal bones mostly, and a few that weren't. Human, small, like a child's hand. After that, they stopped telling me things. I'd ask about the others, if anyone else made it out, but the nurses always changed the subject. When I was discharged 3 weeks later, the orphanage had already been torn down. Nothing but a fenced-off patch of burned dirt. I tried to move on. The state placed me with a foster family a few towns over. Nice people, but I could tell they were afraid of me. I used to wake up screaming at night. Sometimes I'd draw the orphanage in my sleep. The halls, the rooms, even the faces of kids whose names I'd forgotten. My foster mom found one of my drawings once and just stared at it, like she recognized something. When I asked her what was wrong, she said nothing, but I could tell she was lying. Years passed, but Ash Creek never really left me. Every now and then I'd see a headline, "Local boy claims to see ghosts near old orphanage grounds," or "Former firefighter arrested for evidence tampering." I stopped reading them after a while. It was easier to pretend none of it happened. But then, about 10 years later, I got a letter. No return address, just my name, written in that old-fashioned cursive Mrs. Calloway used to use. Inside was a single sentence: "You forgot someone in the basement." That's when I knew it wasn't over. It's strange what time does to a memory. You tell yourself it's faded, that you've moved on, but all it takes is one thing: a smell, a sound, a letter written in handwriting you shouldn't have seen in years, and suddenly, you're right back there. I stared at that letter for hours. The paper smelled faintly of smoke, or maybe that was just my mind playing tricks off. The words were shaky, written with that same looping cursive Mrs. Calloway used on every notice she ever posted on the orphanage board. But she was dead. I saw her room collapse. I saw the flames crawl up the curtains like they were hungry for her. So who wrote it? I didn't tell anyone about it at first. My foster parents would have just thought I was spiraling again. But a few nights later, I woke up to that smell. Kerosene. I swear it was filling the house, thick and oily. I jumped out of bed, ready to scream for help. But when I flicked on the light, there was nothing. No smoke, no smell, just me, shaking. That's when I decided to go back. Ash Creek was only a 2-hour drive. The site had been fenced off for years, but you could still see the foundation from the road. I parked by the ditch where the fire trucks used to line up, then just stood there, staring through the chain link fence at the patch of blackened ground. The town tried to forget. They built a small memorial a few yards away, some stones, a metal plaque with names half erased by weather. My name wasn't on it. Neither was Mrs. Calloway's. I walked the perimeter until I found a spot where the fence had been cut. Someone had been there before me. The dirt inside was uneven, pocked with shallow holes, like someone had been digging. In one of them, I saw something small and gray sticking out of the mud. When I brushed it off, it wasn't a rock. It was porcelain. A doll's face. The same kind we used to get for birthdays. The kind Mrs. Calloway said were special gifts for the quiet ones. I dropped it fast and felt my stomach turn. The ground was colder than it should have been, like it was holding on to something. I remember hearing this faint hum. Not a wind, not a bug, but something steady, almost electric. It got louder when I stepped near the spot where the basement used to be. The trapdoor was still there, charred and warped, but somehow intact. When I crouched down, I could see someone had pried it open recently. There were fresh boot prints in the dirt. I told myself I wouldn't go down, that I'd just take a look and leave. But there was this tug, this need to see. I grabbed the edge of the hatch and pulled it open. A wave of cold air came rushing up, damp and heavy. At first, I couldn't see anything. My phone light barely cut through the dust. But then I spotted them. Drawings. The same kind I used to make after the fire. They were scrawled along the walls, hundreds of them, all done in black charcoal. Children, fire, the orphanage. And in the middle of the floor, a bucket. The same kind they said they found in the ashes years ago. Half melted, rusted through, and inside, ashes. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick and wrong, like the room itself was remembering. Then my phone buzzed in my hand. I nearly screamed. It was an unknown number. When I answered, there was nothing at first, just static. And then, under the hiss, a voice. "You forgot someone in the basement." The line went dead. My light flickered. For a moment, I thought I saw a shadow move across the wall. Small, quick, like a child ducking behind something. I ran. By the time I made it back to my car, the sky had started to lighten. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the keys twice before getting the engine started. I didn't look back, but in the rearview mirror, I swear I saw the faint glow of a lantern swinging near the ruins. Mrs. Calloway always said the quiet ones were her favorites. Now I think I finally understand what she meant. After that night, I told myself I'd imagined it. The voice, the drawings, the lantern light. But that's the thing about lies. When you tell them to yourself enough, they start to sound true. I couldn't sleep for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the basement again. Those drawings, the bucket, the tiny faces half burned into the walls. I tried to tell myself it was just vandalism, some local kids messing around. But then, I remembered the letter, the smell of smoke, the sound of that voice. So I went digging. Ash Creek's records had all been moved to the county archives after the fire. The woman behind the counter looked at me funny when I asked for them, like she knew something I didn't. I signed a few papers, and she brought me a thin, dust-covered box. Inside were reports, photographs, and a few typewritten pages labeled Incident 14B. The photos were the worst part. Charred remains, twisted beams, what looked like melted toys. But one photo didn't fit. It showed a small, clean room, untouched by fire. The walls were white, the floor lined with straw. There was a single metal bed frame, and hanging from the ceiling, chains. The report said it was a disciplinary room. I'd never seen it. None of us had. The basement we knew was for storage, but this one was sealed off by a brick wall. The more I read, the more it stopped sounding like an orphanage and started sounding like something else. Kids had gone missing. 2, maybe 3, all filed as runaways. But the dates didn't match up. One of them disappeared the same week Mrs. Calloway ordered new lumber for the basement renovations. And then there was a name that made my blood run cold. Daniel F. Ward. That was me, listed among the dead. At first I thought it was a typo, but the file had my picture, my real picture, taken before the fire. The description matched me exactly. Age, height, even the scar above my eyebrow. But the status next to my name wasn't survived. It said deceased, remains identified. So who the hell was I? I know how that sounds. Crazy, right? But the deeper I went, the more the records disagreed with reality. There was a survivor listed, sure, but not me. A girl, Lydia Marks, age 9. I didn't remember any Lydia. The only girl near that age back then was quiet, pale, always clinging to Mrs. Calloway's skirt. I used to draw with her sometimes in the common room, but she never said a word. I thought maybe she was the one who sent the letter. Maybe she'd been down in the basement. Maybe she'd seen something I didn't. So I tried to find her. It took a few weeks of digging through old phone books, old addresses, and archived case files. Lydia had been placed in foster care the same year as me, then transferred to a group home in Ohio. The home burned down 3 years later. No survivors. At least that's what the record said. But there was one weird detail. The fire marshal's report listed a handprint on one of the windows, a small one, left in ash, pressed from the inside. That's when I knew the voice wasn't lying. I had forgotten someone. I started having dreams after that. In every one of them, I was back in the orphanage basement. Only this time it wasn't burned. It was clean, bright, and I could hear humming. Soft, familiar. Mrs. Calloway's voice. Then I'd see her shadow on the wall, moving closer. And behind her, a smaller one. A girl's.
After that night, I told myself I'd imagined it. The voice, the drawings, the lantern light. But that's the thing about lies. When you tell them to yourself enough, they start to sound true. I couldn't sleep for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the basement again. Those drawings, the bucket, the tiny faces half burned into the walls. I tried to tell myself it was just vandalism, some local kids messing around. But then, I remembered the letter, the smell of smoke, the sound of that voice. So I went digging. Ash Creek's records had all been moved to the county archives after the fire. The woman behind the counter looked at me funny when I asked for them, like she knew something I didn't. I signed a few papers, and she brought me a thin, dust-covered box. Inside were reports, photographs, and a few typewritten pages labeled Incident 14B. The photos were the worst part. Charred remains, twisted beams, what looked like melted toys. But one photo didn't fit. It showed a small, clean room, untouched by fire. The walls were white, the floor lined with straw.
There was a single metal bed frame, and hanging from the ceiling, chains. The report said it was a disciplinary room. I'd never seen it. None of us had. The basement we knew was for storage, but this one was sealed off by a brick wall. The more I read, the more it stopped sounding like an orphanage and started sounding like something else. Kids had gone missing. 2, maybe 3, all filed as runaways. But the dates didn't match up. One of them disappeared the same week Mrs. Calloway ordered new lumber for the basement renovations. And then there was a name that made my blood run cold. Daniel F. Ward. That was me, listed among the dead. At first I thought it was a typo, but the file had my picture, my real picture, taken before the fire. The description matched me exactly. Age, height, even the scar above my eyebrow. But the status next to my name wasn't survived. It said deceased, remains identified. So who the hell was I? I know how that sounds. Crazy, right? But the deeper I went, the more the records disagreed with reality. There was a survivor listed, sure, but not me. A girl, Lydia Marks, age 9. I didn't remember any Lydia. The only girl near that age back then was quiet, pale, always clinging to Mrs. Calloway's skirt. I used to draw with her sometimes in the common room, but she never said a word. I thought maybe she was the one who sent the letter. Maybe she'd been down in the basement. Maybe she'd seen something I didn't. So I tried to find her. It took a few weeks of digging through old phone books, old addresses, and archived case files. Lydia had been placed in foster care the same year as me, then transferred to a group home in Ohio. The home burned down 3 years later. No survivors. At least that's what the record said. But there was one weird detail. The fire marshal's report listed a handprint on one of the windows. A small one, left in ash. Pressed from the inside. That's when I knew the voice wasn't lying. I had forgotten someone. I started having dreams after that. In every one of them, I was back in the orphanage basement. Only this time it wasn't burned. It was clean, bright, and I could hear humming. Soft, familiar. Mrs. Calloway's voice. Then I'd see her shadow on the wall, moving closer. And behind her, a smaller one. A girl's.
I didn't sleep after that last letter. Couldn't. Every sound in the house felt alive. The creak of the floorboards, the ticking of the old clock, the whisper of wind through the window. It was all saying the same thing. Go back. By dawn, I'd already packed a flashlight, a thermos of coffee, and the folder of records I'd copied. I told myself this was the last time. I'd go to Ash Creek, I'd find whatever truth was left there, and I'd finally stop dreaming about the fire. The sky was still gray when I arrived. The gate hung open like someone had been there recently. The smell of burned earth hit me before I even stepped through. I followed the overgrown path to the basement ruins. The ground was slick with dew, blackened stones jutting through the dirt like bones. I started digging with my hands, slow, careful, until I hit something solid. It was a rusted hinge, maybe part of the old basement door. But next to it was a small metal tag, barely visible under the soot. When I brushed it clean, I saw what was etched into it. Number 14. That had been Lydia's bed number. The air changed after that. The forest went silent. No wind, no birds. Just the low hum again, close. So close it felt like it was inside my head. I turned the flashlight toward the foundation wall. The beam caught something pale between the cracks, a scrap of fabric. When I pulled it free, it disintegrated in my hand.
But underneath it, carved into the stone, were words. Not a name this time, a sentence. Don't let her light go out. I didn't know what it meant, but I felt it. A kind of warmth spreading through the cold air. And then, for the first time in years, I saw her clearly. She was standing just beyond the rubble, small, barefoot, her hair the same color as the ashes. She wasn't burning anymore, just watching me with those hollow, endless eyes. "Daniel," she said, "you left me there." I tried to speak, to tell her I was sorry, that I didn't mean to run, but when I opened my mouth, the smoke came out instead of words, thick, black, choking. I fell to my knees, coughing, and when I looked up, she was gone. The ground where she'd stood was still warm. I buried the tag there. I don't know why. Maybe because it felt like the right thing to do. Maybe because some part of me still hoped she could rest. Before I left, I looked back one last time. The sunrise was breaking through the trees, and for a moment, the light hit the ruins in just the right way, like the orphanage was whole again. Windows, walls, everything. Kids laughing somewhere inside. And then it was gone. It's been a few months since that morning. No more letters, no more dreams. But sometimes when the wind's right, I can still smell the smoke. I tell myself it's just memory, that she's finally at peace. But every night, before I go to bed, I leave the hallway light on, just in case she ever finds her way back. This is Daniel Reeves, and that's all I remember.
Remember, subscribe for more.